All right.
I still see people in the waiting room. Should we just, in the interest of time, get started? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Today we have the pleasure to hear from Dr. Melvin Munsaka. So thanks again for joining today's webinar on Supercharge your statistical analysis of publications with generative AI, R, and Quarto. Sorry, that's quite a title. Dr. Melvin is a leader in the safety statistics with over 25 years in the pharmaceutical industry. And he'll share some insights on using generative AI, R Markdown, and Quarto to make statistical workflows and reporting faster, clearer, and more impactful. Before we get started, just a quick reminder that we will ask you to complete a brief survey at the end of the session. There is a survey link that'll be posted in the chat. We'll have a Q&A at the end, so please submit your questions in the chat during the presentation. And then one last thing, I'm not sure if the system automatically muted you, but if not, if you can kindly please mute yourself throughout the presentation so we can minimize any noise and feedback. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melvin. He's already sharing his screen. And with that, welcome to Melvin.
All right. Well, thanks, Bill, for the invitation. And thank you guys from SSPA for inviting me. I know the title sounds very imposing, and I hope not to disappoint you. And in thinking through this the last few days, I realized that probably 1 hour might not be enough to cover all the stuff that I wanted to cover. But I thought I would just break this up into 2 parts, if everyone allows me to come back and touch on part B. I also want to go ahead and apologize that I wanted to log into my own personal laptop so I can give you some flavor of what part B looks like in terms of actual examples of when you combine R, Quarto, and some of these AI and LLMs, how you can actually speed up your your analysis or help you you and your stakeholders or your students in doing this, and we'll do some of that later. So what I'm going to do is just share my experience working with Quarto and also with AI integration, and every time I talk to some of my colleagues who are statisticians, I get a couple of responses when it comes to, hey, do you use AI? Do you think about AI? Some of what I hear is maybe a little bit of all, kind of like, don't want to touch it, nothing to do with it. I think it's waste of my time. I'm fairly okay where I am, with all my my theory, and so on. And then there are those people who kind of maybe still in the doubting space of, I'm not really sure how to make out of this. I've heard about it, sounds very interesting, but I don't really know what I can do with it, And then there's folks who basically say, I really want to use this all the way, like take advantage of it, So, it doesn't matter what group you are in. I totally understand, But hopefully, after what I say today, and maybe in the part B, that may help change some of your thoughts. The other thing I want to say right away is that the AI stuff and LLM stuff is, there's always something new coming up and things keep changing. So what I thought, for example, was great stuff a year and a half ago now looks like not that great. There's always something that is coming up with something new that I think is more useful, or something that is faster, or really gives me what I'm looking for compared to some of the older tools. So it's not my intention to get into the nitty-gritties of methodology behind LLMs and how they work, but rather kind of show you how these things can be used, from my own experience, and obviously someone like me who came from who started off with LaTeX. To me, LaTeX was king. Nothing else beat LaTeX. If someone told me to go and use Word or this, I said absolutely not. LaTeX is king. I can do what I want with LaTeX, and I was reluctant for a while to even touch R Markdown I mean, I knew how to use R. R is my go-to, language, and along the way, I realized that maybe I should be a little bit open-minded. So I started exploring, R Markdown, and lo and behold, I was very surprised at what you can do with, what we can do in R Markdown, still fully taking advantage of LaTeX, to get what you are trying to do, but also having all these other things that you could not actually, that you cannot do so efficiently or so easily within LaTeX, and then later on, Quarto, it's a little bit of a newer, something new, but, in my opinion and others, we kind of feel that maybe Quarto really is the game changer. And again, as I said, in the next part B, we kind of get to nitty-gritty some examples of how actually this and how actually this stuff actually works. So what I'm going to share to you is a little bit of maybe a 30,000 view of what is the ecosystem. So if you're starting off from, if you're thinking about Word or LaTeX or Quarto or Typist, some of the new stuff, where do you actually begin? Where do you go to look for stuff, and what is really out there? And then bring in the large language models. What are all these DeepSeek? What is all this thing about running R online without installing R, like WebR or Shiny Live? And how do you bring all that stuff together to help you actually do a whole bunch of things that you probably would not do before? So that's kind of the idea here, is to present what is the big picture, like out there as part A. So I'm going to begin with a disclaimer and an apology as well. So whatever I say here are my own opinions, and I use the term PowerPoint. These aren't PowerPoint slides. They're actually made from Quarto. I also want to acknowledge that I actually put these slides together with myself and AI, a large language model. So I was kind of going back and forth. Here's what I know. Here's what I think. Here's my slide. Help me clear this up. Give me a good background. I don't like this background. So it was basically a nice discussion. And some of the stuff that I was getting was like, oh, please give me a break. But nonetheless, that's where I think the human being is still needed. I also want to apologize to anybody that I have stolen from or plagiarized. When you use AI, and there's bound to be something that you're going to be taking from somebody. Particularly if you are building this on a RAG model, it's possible that someone else stuff that is much better than mine or cleaner is probably better. So I want to kind of apologize to anybody who will say, yeah, that's my slide. Apologies to that. Also, I'm not an expert at AI. Just letting you know that. But what I do is I actually use AI. So I'm gonna kind of, when someone reached out to me last night, he said that hey, not everybody knows about R. Some people just use SAS or Stata or some other stuff. So you may want to maybe talk about this in Generative, which is why I thought about the 30,000 view. So I'll kind of talk about the R ecosystem, then to compare R Markdown versus LaTeX versus Word, and then of course bring in the idea of Quarto, and then touch on the issue of reproducibility in research. And then of course, most people are very familiar with RStudio, maybe among the crowd, but may not be aware that there's a new IDE called Positron, from the same people who actually made RStudio, which in my view is maybe a game changer in something that you can actually leverage to do a whole lot more, particularly if you want to remove that idea of just using R. If you want to kind of think about R and Python or Julia or some other languages in the same environment, I think Positron is really the way to go. And of course, I'll mention some stuff about Quarto for academic publishing, and then later on in part B, we'll actually look at some actual examples of maybe creating a book or creating a syllabus or an entire class, and maybe your own website to showcase yourself. Then I'll touch on the LLMs and IDEs. How do they work with conclusion, and then later on I'll pause for some questions. So I'll keep on looking at my time here as well as I talk, so that I don't go over. All right. So with that said, for people who are not familiar with with R, R. So I wanted to kind of quickly say what R is. So so basically it is. Everyone would agree that R was designed specifically for data analysis. It's a programming language, compared to, say, some other tools like SQL and stuff like that. It is open source, so it's free to use. And that's a good thing. There's a lot of packages out there that you can use for R, that you can use within R. Some of them do appear on CRAN. Some of them tend to sit in GitHub for a while, and never make their way to CRAN. But in my experience, when I'm thinking of something new that is actually like, oh, I gotta write this program to do this, what I found is that somebody else has probably done it. And I now leverage out of LLMs to kind of help me figure out who has done this on GitHub or maybe somewhere on their private webpage. So there's a very rich, extensive ecosystem of packages. In terms of community support, I'll probably say between Python and R, there's a lot of community support out there. You can pose a question, on a Stack Overflow, and somebody there would give you some advice. So really, the support is very strong. So I think that R is really great for programming, for modeling. And I know some of my colleagues who are pro Python might argue that, well, I do think that maybe Python is better for machine learning, but I would want to argue that actually I think R has caught up. I think I can do all my machine learning models right within R. Not only that, I can actually call Python, from within R to leverage some of the Python tools. Not so the boundary between R and Python seems to have shrunk. And when you go to Positron, you kind of see that those boundaries actually no longer exist. So, and visualization, I don't think that, to my knowledge, from a stats perspective, anybody beats R. Yes, there are things out there like Tableau, but if you want to combine statistics and the visualization, I like to use the term visual analytics to indicate that behind the graph, there might be some very heavy methodology. I think R is probably the way to go on a ggplot and some of the new stuff like that have kind of propped up. Now, importantly enough, there's this question of reproducible research, which I think is very quite important, especially for academic research, that you must think about being able to reproduce your analysis so that somebody else can actually go ahead and do that. So, in terms of R, in terms of the strengths, on the left, I show you the strengths there that, data manipulation. I know initially people would think that I can manipulate data using SAS, then move into R. But I think things like dplyr have been able to show that actually you can do all that now within R, along with some really strong, good packages to help you clean the data or do any kind of wrangling. And I think I mentioned a lot of this stuff already in terms of cutting edge methodology, and active community development. And documentation-wise, there is really plenty to go out there. Where is this used mostly? I think a lot of academia use R a lot, but you also see this in bioinformatics, financial modeling, market research, social research, and more recently, contrary to what folks were thinking about, saying that maybe, folks like FDA won't accept R. Are no longer true, and in fact, there's a very interesting pilot out there between the R consortium and the FDA, where they're actually piloting the use of R in submission. So I think, those limitations are actually gone. Most people agree that at the core of R, yes, you can run R, from the command line, interface, but most people agree that probably the way to go, at least for now, is probably RStudio, which is a very great engine to do a lot of, your interface with R, and again, if you haven't used R, it's basically, some that has got 4 panels with a place where you do source code, the console, then the environment, and then all the file management system. Now, you can do this for package management. You can do this for version control using GitHub. And I'm going to get too much into GitHub. We can talk about that probably later. You can really organize your project very, very well. So if you're someone who wants to maybe, teach a class online using maybe Posit Cloud, I think there's a fantastic way in which to organize your entire class and files if you actually take advantage of how R manages to control some of the organization. Debugging and profiling, fantastic. Now it used to be terrible before, and for those people who are die-hard Word, I do understand that, maybe R at the beginning can be a little bit intimidating, particularly if you're just using R code. But the good news is that now you can actually access, VS Code, from within the RStudio environment, and that allows you to have some interface that looks pretty similar to Word, in terms of how it looks like in terms of bolding stuff, and that has really helped to help propel R to the next level, in my opinion. So again, I'm not going to go through too much of this. It's just more for people who haven't seen R, in terms of what I just said, in terms of the summary, the code editor, interactive console, environment reviewer, plot reviewer, package manager, and all these allow you to do a lot of auto code completion, keyboard shortcuts if you are a diehard of that. Look at code snippets, and suggestions, but also there's a very nice integrated help system, that you can do with a lot of multiple project help. If you haven't seen the RStudio interface, it basically looks something like this, and you can kind of see that, there's the source panel where you probably put all your files and do your running from here. You can still run stuff from the command line by sourcing code, but by and large, most people kind of tend to use this now, particularly if you're using R Markdown, you probably would want to leverage this. This is easier to use. And of course, whatever is in your environment when you're running R, you can kind of see where this is at, and you can kind of see your files and also your outputs right there. So pretty easy, pretty straightforward, and for those of you who may not be familiar, this is the current, as of September, this is the current place where where our folks at RStudio are storing a lot of all the stuff here. So if you go to the, I don't know if it's gonna allow me. When you're inside within a presentation, it won't allow you. But if you go here, there's a lot of information about guides on how to use R. A lot of information and help and videos that you actually can get you started if you are completely new to RStudio. So I do invite you to go take a look at this. But when you do part B, we shall actually go through to show you what this actually looks like. If you move to now Markdown, so and again, I'm going to go to details in Markdown. So Markdown really allows you to sort of integrate your programming together with with your narrative, so that I don't have to write all my outputs or my analysis in one environment and then take those and import them into Word. I can do all this within the same environment. I can hide and show the code. I can suppress the comments. So what you end up getting is a very nice clean output of Word, PowerPoint, or whatever you want your output to look like. So the file will probably look like this, and you can, when you switch this to VS Code, this actually becomes This actually becomes a very nice interface that looks very much like Word. So the key thing is that within R Markdown you can combine your narrative plus your programs, and therefore you are kind of in the same environment, and you don't have to be going between two different systems. So the other thing about R Markdown is this idea of one source for all the work, but multiple possible outputs. So from the same source code, I can output HTML, PDF, Word, presentations, and whatever I want it to look like, and even interactive documents. The documents can be dynamic as long as they are interactive. They are HTML format, reproducible. Everything is one file. So you can actually bundle up everything so that there's no dependencies in your output. It's all within the HTML file. And then of course the flexibility. You can mix R, Python, SQL, and other languages. Granted, within RStudio, maybe mixing R and Python might be a little bit challenging, but everything else seems to work fairly seamlessly, And then of course you can create shiny apps, widgets, and even dashboards. So the typical flow would be even R Markdown file. Then the R Markdown language, and then the Pandoc. And I'm going to go too much details what Pandoc is, but think of this as that as some engine here converting this this Markdown file to whatever format you want to look like. So if you are a LaTeX fan, you would probably need to have a PDF. And obviously, if you are going to use a PDF within R Markdown, you would also need to have a version of LaTeX running on your computer. But the key thing is one source, multiple outputs. So bottom line, with R Markdown, you can HTML, you can PDF via LaTeX, you can output Word documents, you can use ODT, which is the LibreOffice version, which is a free version of Word online there. RTF, you can create different types of slides. Personally, I gravitate towards Revue.js or iOS slides that are interactive, like these slides over here. And then, of course, if you are looking into much more key things, you can write books, you can create websites, you can create dashboards, you can also create different apps. And again, just to re-emphasize, this is the typical setup of the code formatting, with a Markdown syntax. And if you switch this to VS Code, it just looks like a Word, just like a Word file. But if you're a diehard like me, you still stick to the code. So so to close this out, you have the Knitr, the engine that basically you use to kind of report or create all your outputs that you're looking for from your R Markdown syntax. You have your R Markdown package, which really orchestrates the process. If you're writing books, you're looking at book down. If you're creating a blog, you're looking at blog down. If you're looking at HTML, you can also use page down. If you're creating dashboards, you are using a lot of Flex dashboard. And personally, my favorite for teaching purposes up to now has always been the Sharingan package, which creates some very nice interactive slides. If you want to know a little bit more about Markdown language, again, this website from the PostDefault has a lot of information on Markdown with lots of examples and a whole library of examples. So you might ask the question, well, Markdown versus LaTeX versus Word. Why would anyone want to do that? And I'm obviously coming with a bias personally, but I'm also somebody who actually has used LaTeX a lot. And in fact, in some of my recent experiences, some of my colleagues, I still prefer to use LaTeX. Overleaf is one example how you can collaborate, or can always install your own MikTeX on your laptop. But in my experience, I think Markdown has got much easier syntax. Someone who's very new compared to, let's say, Overleaf. I think it's faster to learn. I think someone who has not done math using LaTeX from Word will probably be very challenging. You can do multiple outputs here, in Markdown. Pretty much, Overleaf sticks very much to, at least LaTeX is pretty much heavily linked to PDF. And when it comes to integrated analysis, integrating code and code. Oops, I apologize for that. I try to close that. It's not actually working. I apologize for that. You can kind of see that for someone like me who has worked a lot with LaTeX in the past, my own, and again, takes with a grain of salt, my experience with R Markdown has been much more positive than once I had to use LaTeX a long time ago. LaTeX, don't misunderstand me. LaTeX is very, very powerful. But for those of you who are interested, I can also tell you that actually, if you go to Overleaf now, Overleaf on the right side, you also see there's now a tab for VS Code, which is pretty nice that Overleaf has introduced. In addition to the LaTeX raw code, you can now also use actually VS Code. But still, I think that R Markdown overall is to me a better tool to go. So when I compare with Word, a lot of people they love Word. I think Word is the best thing that is out there. Yes, Word has got some nice things. What you see is what you get. But when it comes to a couple of things that you really want to do, like reproducibility, I would probably say Word is nowhere near R Markdown, and I think R Markdown beats it there. Code integration is kind of native within R Markdown. In Word, you cannot actually execute code within Word unless someone knows something different. Version control is very hard in Word, but there are a lot of things that I think really go for R Markdown when I compare to Microsoft Word. And again, this is not to say that Word is a bad tool, but I'm just kind of giving a comparison of some of the benchmarks. Now, so then in comes in Quarto, and someone might say, well, things are great. So why would anyone really want to switch from R Markdown to Quarto? And again, I have to say that for me, R Markdown was actually pretty great. It did all what I wanted to do. I didn't see any kind of problems with it, But then when I started looking at the ideas, a while ago when Quarto was being introduced, I was kind of like, whatever. But then I began to kind of play with it, and once it matured, I kind of realized that, oh my goodness me, it has a whole lot more to offer. At least from my perspective, having experience with R Markdown, that you can do a lot of other stuff here that I could not do in Quarto. And I'll tell you what these are. One, I think Quarto really does represent the next generation publishing system. It is a successor to R Markdown, and I like R Markdown, R Markdown or RStudio. And you can see when you say RStudio, it is very centric to R, although you can still call in Python inside there. But Quarto takes it to the next level, which is, hey, remove the boundaries between these different languages, and actually you can now run R, Python, Julia, Observable, all within the same environment. It's got some really unified syntax across the different languages, and again, it's developed by the same folks who developed POSIT, and it actually goes back to 2022 when I started when I listened to the first presentation on it. But fast forward to now, it has come a long way in terms of some really good stuff out there. I think it's really the next thing that you want to do. If you are really someone who wants to take advantage of a lot of these nicer things, for example, being language agnostic, you can still do your command line interface. I think the VS support, in my opinion, in Quarto is much better than maybe in R Markdown. For example, if I wanted to use VS Code for some of the packages like Sharingan, in RStudio, actually I can't do that. It's more modern in terms of the architecture, and a lot of very nice built-in features, with less package dependency. And anyone who has used R can attest to running something and then something fails after you run it, after you update your version of R. So really, compared to R, here are some of the things that I think speak to Quarto as something that you still want to do. But on the other hand, R is pretty well known, is very well established. There's more online resources for now, but I can guarantee you that I think Quarto is coming along very well in my opinion, right? And again, whatever I could do in R Markdown in terms of one source main outputs, you can still do here. You can, again, really mix languages when you're executing code very, very seamlessly, and very, very nice responsive grids, in my opinion. Not only that, when you want to, when it comes to deploying to GitHub, Netlify, or wherever you are deploying this, for your stuff, including Quarto Pub itself, it's so much easier and much more seamless, in my opinion. And again, I'm referencing this to what I did with R Markdown. It's out of theming. One of the arguments that had come previous was that LaTeX, and maybe Word, when you want to make things, quote unquote, really nice and pretty, are pretty challenging, but because, in Quarto, you can very easily, bring in a CSS, language within. You can create these real nice custom-made reports. So for anybody who's running some outputs where there's some branding, you can very easily create this, very easily, and you don't actually need to know a lot of CSS. You can kind of leverage large language models to actually help you do that, And I think also, in the past, I felt that with R Markdown, I was limited very much to using BibTeX. I think that in terms of the citations in Quarto, I think that Quarto offers a whole lot more, functionality when it comes to citation. And of course, interactive elements, when it comes to graphs, certainly Observable is also a very, very powerful language which runs within Quarto. And of course, Shiny still works there, and also you can create your own widgets. The good news is that actually a Quarto file, if you use R Markdown, looks pretty much very similar to to what you would see in R Markdown. You still have your YAML at the top here. There might be a couple of differences on how you are commenting out or your options. Whereas in R, you might put the options within the backtick line, and put your options here. But within Quarto, you can kind of do this within the actual code, which actually to me is a much easier way to do. But you can see that I'm able to kind of leverage R and also leverage Python code in the same document. In terms of the workflow, again, like R Markdown, you kind of have the same thing. You write in R, the file is called RMD. In Quarto, it's called QMD. That's how you differentiate between the two. But the same idea of a workflow of the source code, and then instead of in Nitra, you have something here that renders the file into one of your preferred outputs, which could be any of these, PDF, Word, presentations. It could be publication, GitHub pages, and actually you can also add here recently a new idea that has come up is something called dashboards, which to me are also a game changer. I think dashboards were pretty difficult to create before. Now you can very easily create a dashboard that are great for teaching, great for storytelling, but also integrating the narrative, tables mixed with graphs, mixed with your findings in the same thing, yet with a very engaging output that allows the users to actually interact with the output to some extent, right? So that's kind of the gist behind R Markdown. And I just want to mention again this idea of reproducibility. I'm just going to kind of scroll through this very quickly. So one of the big ideas behind R Markdown was, way back, a paper was written questioning the integrity of publications, and that people, you can never be able to trace. Sometimes you can't trace what someone did, but it looks like with Quarto, it does an even better job when it comes to reproducibility, so that you maintain your integrity, your transparency, and all this other stuff. Yeah, I think someone is drawing something on the screen. I don't know where that is coming from. I apologize for that. Oops. Yeah, my bad. Okay. All right. So I think that given this background, Quarto really is the way to go. But I don't want to make R Markdown look very bad. There are things in terms of the key features that still really do a great job. So if you're someone who's like, I'm not moving into Quarto, there's still some great things that you can still do. You can still do there, but you can also think about some of the best practices. But when we switch to Quarto, you clearly see that there are things that Quarto offers, that R does actually, that Markdown does not. So all these relate to, freezing execution. We want to go deep into what that is a little bit more on the computer science side, but also in terms of tracking versions of different different versions of packages. I think Markdown does a better job. And I mentioned cross publishing, cross referencing languages, and so on. But also when it comes to publishing and also organizing the structure itself. Really, if you are building like an example of building a class, starting from the syllabus all the way to including videos, including lecture notes, including exercises, or in a very nicely linked where that looks really good. I think Quarto does offer a better idea. Quarto is very, very well documented. There's a dedicated website with lots of examples, starting from creating dynamic documents, all the way to creating publications, and also different authoring tools, interactivity, creating your own website, and I think, along with a lot of links to different YouTube videos, and so I definitely invite you to take a look at this website. It can be a little bit intimidating in the sense of the amount of information that is there, but almost anything that you want is probably one of the small tabs there. So if you want to create a talk, I wanted to create a website, I wanted to create to write a book, I wanted to create an assignment or an exam. Most of the stuff is probably contained within this website. So then comes in the idea of RStudio is great. You can kind of see that I can run R, I can run Python, by calling packages that actually require you to access a Python, for example. But there's a limit there. There's a limit there to what you can do. So the idea of Positron kind of takes the idea of RStudio to the next level. And the people who like to think about data science, kind of like this a lot, because a lot of people in data science, or who like to call themselves data science, or people, maybe that's not the right thing to say. I should probably say maybe people who had their first experience using using Python, maybe might be more drawn to Jupyter Notebook. And you can run R in Jupyter Notebook, but Jupyter Notebook, when it comes to really doing statistical analysis to create all these fantastic reports, too has some challenges from my perspective. And again, I'm speaking from my experience. Other folks might say differently. So to me, looking at the challenges, some of the things that I had to do to use Python in RStudio, kind of drive the idea of, hey, how about bringing in a new IDE, Positron? And Positron is basically the next generation IDE from Positron, the same guys who created RStudio. And the idea is that let's actually open up, remove the boundaries between these languages, but also the idea of bringing in VS Code to make it really, really seamless. And the first beta version was actually, it goes back to 2024, and I think the most recent version, which is now available for download. I think the other versions were kind of on GitHub. Now there's a website where you can download this, and I'll share what that is. You can download this and actually kind of gives you an alternative IDE to RStudio. Unfortunately, I don't have it installed on this laptop, but I have it on the other one. So, but I'll show you in the next in part B, how this looks like and how you can kind of compare the two interfaces. And again, it's very, very modern for someone who's really a die-hard data science, machine learning, AI person. I think Positron is a great tool to go, a great place to go. But not only that, it's really great for statisticians. In being able to do certain things that you could not do within RStudio, where you can see a lot of the stuff right on the side. So it is designed for data scientists, And I say this with a grain of salt. I know some people might want to call themselves data scientists versus statistician. I didn't actually put this. That was AI which put that. Which put that when I said, "Who do you think Positron is designed for?" And that's what AI told me. And I said, "I'll just leave it there." I may disagree completely with that statement. I think it works very much for anyone who's doing any kind of data analysis or research. So when you put them side by side with RStudio, obviously RStudio it was an R first. Good workflows, and all these other things that you can do within RStudio. But you also have got these things that you can integrate within R, which are a little bit much more maybe not as easy as what I'm seeing in Positron. It is stable and reliable, yes, compared to Positron, but Positron has got all this new stuff that is really core to the development of Positron to make it easy for anybody who wants to really take their analysis or research, or whether it be reproducibility or writing a book to the next level. I think Positron takes that to the very next level. So there are a lot of nice features that I already mentioned here: multiple languages, Data Explorer, rather than have clicking on your environment to look at the data. Positron actually has got a dedicated Data Explorer and a plot viewer. You can actually query the data within the Data Explorer itself without having to do a whole lot of things. So really, really useful if you are doing a lot of analysis. You can also explore variables very, very easily. Folks who have used SAS know there's something called pro contents. I think when I look at some of these tools that are emerging for doing something similar for exploring variables, I think one can clearly see that some of the newer tools for doing this data wrangling and EDA, that these tools that are coming up that are now a part of Positron make it so much easier for someone to do this very, very, very seamlessly. And all these other things. The other thing is that, and I'll jump to this in a minute, is that whereas in RStudio, the AI part, if you want to leverage AI, ChatGPT, you kind of have to, leverage other tools that you have to call in to enable you to actually, leverage these tools. Whereas within Positron, it's kind of built in. There's a little robot chatbot on the side that actually pops up once you open Positron in your file, and you can immediately start to communicate with the chatbot, right? So compared to R, it's slightly designed maybe differently, but again, it might be, to just be honest, it might be intimidating for someone who's starting off from R, RStudio. I've asked a couple of my friends who have looked at it, when I asked, so why are you back using RStudio? And what I heard was, well, there's way too many things in Positron, and it gets used to. There's a very nice video someone just released, on YouTube, which basically says an easy way to migrate from RStudio to Positron. But I'll definitely encourage you to try it out. Take a look at what is there. But once you get the gist of what it's doing, you really begin to enjoy Positron. And in part B, we actually will play with a couple of these examples of Positron side by side with RStudio. And again, if you're someone who's used to Word, you want to really see the narrative part. I think it's kind of so much easier in Positron compared to maybe RStudio, compared to RStudio. So the interface looks something like this. I talked about the left panel. And I know you can't see a lot here, but you still get what you want to see over here. And you can do whatever I could do, whatever I could do in RStudio, you can still do here. But there's this part where you can actually see the output directly, so that without having to go click on the plot, you can see everything on the left panel. Now I'm going to speed up a little bit here since I'm running out of time. So I'm going to go into details about Positron. We'll see this next time. But again, there is a dedicated website about Positron on GitHub. all the things that it can do. And in case you are wondering about should I use Positron or RStudio for current projects, this table probably can help you to figure that out. And as you can see, on the right there, the green checks kind of tells you that probably if any of these things that are not checked here, you may want to probably start thinking about using Positron. Obviously, you have to acknowledge that Positron is still in the beta testing. Okay, so I'm just gonna click through this very quickly so I can just get to the LLM part that folks want to hear about. You can do a lot of stuff that you did in LaTeX from Quarto. Whatever you can do in terms of publishing papers, manuscripts, or whatever you can do, it's so much easier to do in Quarto than in LaTeX, in my opinion. Books, very, very easy to write a book. And I give some examples here. Creating websites. I think these days you want to have a website for yourself, or you want to have a website for your class. If you look at the ASA web page in Biopharm, a lot of the sections have got their own external web page. Most of actually were built by using Quarto. So bottom line, Quarto can help you to really move away from any kind of package or in one environment. And through Quarto, you can have got all these possible outcomes, including dashboards. For those people who are hard LaTeX, there's a new tool that just popped up a couple of months ago called Typist, which I think is going to really help propel, for people who are hard LaTeX. This is going to help them to do all the stuff they could do in LaTeX within Quarto. And again, it's still in development, some new things coming out. So stay tuned. It has got its own web page, but let me just close up in the next 5 minutes talking about large language models. So when it comes to AI, I like to think of being able to leverage AI and large language models to help me with being efficient, creating timely, analysis, packaging, or interpreting analysis, right? But there's some whole low-hanging fruit there. For example, code interpretation, data wrangling, debugging errors. I think AI does a great job. But you also can do some really advanced things, like creating a Shiny app. The Posit guys have an entire little website where you can literally type, where you can ask for create an Shiny app to do this for me. And I've done a lot of those things. Yes, some of them you still have to fix them, but all that stuff is a little bit more advanced, or doing something even more in terms of creating a report that is customized with logos, and then you can also now package your output using chatbots so that maybe the person who's looking at your output, HTML, can actually interact with your HTML output. They can kind of communicate with output very, very, very easily. And you can leverage these AI LLM tools in 2 ways. One, you can reach out to the actual tool itself and do the query, then you copy paste the what you have given there into your RStudio or Quarto or Positron environment, which I think is very tedious. Alternatively, so a lot of these tools, they all have different, strengths, I should say. When you try all of them for the same query or same prompt, you kind of get different. And sometimes you get something completely way off, almost what I call hallucinating. But you can also use some of the newer tools like Elma that work within the environment. And again, we shall see what some of these things are. In the slides, I've kind of hyperlinked some of the stuff to help you kind of see what they all look like. What's interesting is trying to create a prompt for each of these tools and maybe just seeing what kind of answer they give you. Some of them work differently, like Julius works differently. You have to upload your actual data, but not company data, obviously. And it kind of run you through with the code, whether it's Python or it's R, to help you do your analysis. And a lot of the new tools within RStudio and also Quarto, in Positron, you can call any of these tools within your environment to help you do this much faster. So, you can do a lot of stuff, in RStudio. I'll argue that it's not integrated. You still have to call these things from outside. You need an API, and obviously you gotta pay some money to use them directly. You need an API key unless you're using one of the free versions. I will call your attention to a new package called Elma within RStudio that you can actually use to call any of those large language models. Is very, very nicely documented. I think it's very mature now. This link from I can't remember what his name is, but gives a really nice overview of the RStudio ecosystem with regards to all these tools, that are developed within RStudio or within POSIT, but also by other people, and we'll show some of these in part B. Unlike RStudio, within Positron, everything is kind of built in. The actual AI tool to help you do out of the AI large language models is actually built in on the left side. So it looks like a little robot. So you can actually query it as you are doing your programming. You can call some of the various models. I like to use Claude a lot because it does. I think it's one of the best at programming. So ultimately, there's a lot of stuff that you can do. I know I'm out of time, so I'm just going to kind of wrap this up because you'll see all this in part B of, so how does it actually work? How does it actually work in practice? And when you compare Positron versus R, where do you think these things work better in terms of you, the end user, being able to use them? I say that I'm not going to go deep into what these LLMs are, so I do invite you to look at this very nice description here within POSIT, with the folks at POSIT, where they try to give in very nice language what these LLMs are. So I'll start to kind of close by saying, and I know I didn't leave enough time for questions, that there's a lot out there that is emerged, to help you do a lot of things that we could not do before. That can really help your work as a statistician or data analyst to speed up your analysis, while leveraging AI, to do, things that would take you maybe 5-6 days. You can probably do them in a couple of hours, or even minutes. You can build a lot of dashboards, which I've been able to do in my own work. And this can not only make your work easier, but also your teaching very easy. But also, if you're going to build your own brand or website there, you can actually use this to help you maybe market yourself out there as somebody. I think these days having a website is very useful, and it's also free to do that. You can just get a free account with GitHub and build this within. You can literally build a website in 30 seconds using Quarto. So I know I went above Bill. I apologize for that. Only have 30 minutes. But the good news is, in part B, we shall go deeper into some actual examples of how to do what I said here.
Well, thanks, Melvin. That was a lot to take in, and I do look forward to part B to see what's to come. I don't see any questions in the chat, so if any of the attendees have some things they want to run by Melvin, please take that opportunity.
Hello, Professor. Is that possible? You can share the PowerPoint.
Yes, I'll be sharing the PowerPoint. Yes, it's actually an HTML file which I made self-contained. I'll share that. I'll add some very detailed references and examples from YouTube to get you started very, very quickly. I'll do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's a very valuable the presentation. Yeah.
Do we have anybody else?
Okay.
Okay. Well, with that, I like to thank.
So there is a question about what is part B. So part B is really more of hands-on, so to speak. A lot of choose, here's some concrete examples and tools, but I would also like to put this online on one of the GitHub pages so that you can kind of play along if you want to on creating your own website, creating your own dashboard, and how you can, write a book in a couple of minutes, just the things that you can, all the things that you can do in Positron and in R. I would like in Quarto, I would like to showcase how some of these look like. Obviously, to be biased to my own line of work, so I apologize for that in advance. I work in pharma, so a lot of what I will show you will be related to pharma, but it will be a very practical setting of having you guys actually try it out or play along as I go, as I show the actual content and things.
Well, I'm grateful there's a part B because I did look to download Positron, but of course I have to go through my IT department. So
yes, exactly.
If anybody's interested in part B and you might have some limitations with your computer, I encourage you to start that process now so that when we get to part B, we can play.
Yeah. And the same goes for the large language models. Some of them, some of your companies may not allow you to access,
yeah.
so I'll definitely leverage an iPad, A lot of what I'll do in part B will leverage what's already available online. Most of you might have heard about WebR, which doesn't require you to download R. You can run it from any web browser, along with the Shiny Live. You don't need a server. You can do that from online. So we'll be able to do this, either online or through the Posit cloud, which I think probably will allow you to run. But I will create a shared place where people can actually go download the code and try to run this along as well.
Okay. I guess with that, Melvin, we'd like to say thank you one more time. I'd also like to thank our fellow SSPA officers, Dooley and Tessa, for helping make this happen.
There's a question there. There's a question there, Bill. Did you make the slides? Yeah, did you make the slides using Quarto? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I did develop the slides using Quarto, completely using Quarto.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we call it a day? Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. We can certainly pass them on to Melvin if he doesn't get them directly. And we could also think about them in planning for part B. So thank you again, everybody. Thanks for supporting SSPA, and thanks again to Melvin for your time and efforts. We know it takes a lot of time to put this type of stuff together. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.